So here I am again, Andrew Gibbons with Rebecca Norton. We're looking at Nancy Kline's 10 components of a thinking environment in a bit of detail, not huge. They'll all be returned to and given more time in the future. We've looked at attention. We're now looking at incisive questions, which I've summarized in 2 words as removing assumptions. It's much more than that, Rebecca. You know more about this than me. What's incisive questions all about?
Oh, it's a good point. It's a good one, isn't it, this one? So it's about removing assumptions that limit ideas. And I think for this one to work, you have to already be applying that first one, attention. You have to be giving your full attention. You have to be listening properly to someone. And incisive questions is about challenging these limiting assumptions or limiting beliefs that you might identify them. The key is that you've got to have heard them first. You know, often we say things that just roll off our tongue. Oh, well, I couldn't possibly do that, and blah, 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 blah. And although it's part of a natural conversation, so as a listener, you have to be thinking, hang on a minute, who says they can't do this? Or why can't they do that? And if you're listening thoroughly, then you can ask the right incisive question to get them past that, I think.
Okay, as ever, lots of stuff here. I guess that requires someone sufficiently interested in the other person to be bothered to go there and do this stuff. And I wonder how many of those people, particularly in the workplace, there are. It also, for me, means the acceptance of limiting assumptions, that you actually own these, that you believe that someone else's perception of your limiting assumptions are fact. Let's explore limiting assumptions a bit. What do we mean by that? Because it might sound a bit psychobabbly. I think I can relate to that. I think I'm aware of some of my own, but I'm only thinking that. Tell us a bit more about limiting assumptions.
Yeah, my understanding is very similar to the sort of limiting beliefs. I'm making an assumption about a situation or a person based on my frame of reference or based on my experience with that situation or that person before. That's not necessarily accurate or true. You know, I think it's putting limitations on something. So I'm not necessarily this is the problem with limiting assumptions, isn't it? Is that it can stop us from doing things, or it can stop us from behaving in a certain way because we believe something to be true or not to be true, and therefore it can hold us back. And I think that's the danger with limiting assumptions for me.
Okay. Again, I'm trying to do this live. I've got them. I'm 61 years old. I've been in the business of learning and development nearly 40 years. In that time, I've developed parameters, boundaries, limitations to what I believe I'm capable of, what I believe others as humans are capable of, and maybe individually, as I've got to know people, what they individually are capable of. Is that the sort of thing we're talking about?
I guess so, yes. But maybe it's the willingness to challenge some of those ideas. I think we take things for granted, don't we? We've done something in a particular way. We know roughly the outcome that we're going to get or the results that we're going to get. You know, and maybe we've tried something before and we've not been successful at it, or it's not gone the way we thought, and then we thought, oh, well, we won't do that again. I think that's an interesting point. And when you were just talking about that, then it is fascinating, because I'm thinking, well, actually, you know, sometimes we maybe don't want to try something new, or maybe we're not willing. So you're right. I think we've got to be an acceptance there in the first instance, that maybe we are limiting ourselves, and we don't always realize that. So I think this is where the partnership thing comes in, or that incisive questioning, is sometimes we need somebody else to point it out to us. And I think that for me is the key, having someone else who's given their full attention to us, who's listened thoroughly, and who's sort of questioned whether what we've just said is true, whether it is accurate, whether it's helpful or not, and then are able to devise a question that would help us to see something different.
This is deep stuff.
Yes.
And to me, and it relates to my style, if I can call it that, of coaching, it's relational, as I call it. I don't believe I can help someone until I've understood their context, who they are, what they do. To a degree, I suppose they're limiting assumptions, but I've not thought of it in that way. I've always taken the view that I've needed to get to know someone for months, not 3 days, to make a real impact. I know that conflicts with some other people who think they've got magic powder that can mean, hey, look, I've coached this person, that's immediately marvelous. I don't think that happens. But then that might be a limiting assumption. Maybe that is possible. It's starting to make me wonder about everything I say might be based upon a limiting assumption.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because actually, I guess there is not necessarily one truth. There can be many truths to a situation, and I suppose just because we think it to be true doesn't necessarily mean it is, but then just because somebody else is going to challenge us on that doesn't necessarily mean that's the best thing either. So it's like, ooh, this is a tricky one. But I think for me, it is about trying to help people reach their potential, and it's about helping people move beyond what they think they're capable of at this minute in time. So I see it as I'm going to look at it from that point of view as though it's a positive thing.
Oh, undoubtedly. You're waiting for me to come in with the pessimistic negatives now that I'm getting prone to. You're the positive person in this conversation always. And I guess relating this to the workplace, which is after all where we're thinking primarily, but it's not exclusively so, relating this to the workplace, I guess it's dependent upon another party, or plural, being sufficiently interested, bothered, finding enough time and concern for someone to explore these issues, not in a therapeutic way, but in a making things more effective in the workplace sort of way. I've rarely seen those people in managerial roles. I've rarely seen people, and this might surprise some people I work with, I've rarely seen them behave in this way. I've very rarely seen people sit down and say, look, the door's shut, it's going to stay shut, everything's off. I'd like to talk to you about how things are with you, not just in a performance sense, but about what you feel you're capable of that you're unable to do here, and how much of that is down to me. I've never heard that conversation taking place since 1982.
Yeah, it's not necessarily something that you come across very often, is it? But I think this could work really well in a workplace, especially in organizations where they're perhaps developing new things or new products or, medicines and, on that sort of scale of things. Actually, they're often coming up against barriers. They're often coming up against things that they think they can't get over. So actually, this could work really well in that type of environment. And if you've got the right atmosphere and that right environment with these components in, to move beyond something that you perceive to be a barrier, actually, well, how can we get around this problem? Working together as a team, this could be really effective.
I think so. And I guess, what am I thinking now? I feel it's all right now to stop, pause and think for a minute in these conversations, because it's entirely contextually the right thing to do. I think so. And I guess it's disappointing that we're talking about specific contexts of a workplace. And yeah, the scientific community is accustomed to this. They've got a very clear mission and purpose. They're typically supportive of each other. I say, maybe they're not. Maybe they're all out to sort of knife each other and get the credit for things. I don't know. But they're resilient people who are working towards a purpose, and they're used to knockbacks. And therefore, I'd like to explore this. Maybe they're managed in a certain way where this becomes a more natural way of doing things. Creative environments, musicians. I was fascinated at one time watching rehearsals of the very top end elite rock bands in rehearsal and how they go about it. It's not all shouty, sweary, push each other about and drink lots of booze. A lot of it is very earnest, very serious talk about something very specific. And they're hugely supportive of each other because they know each other. They live with each other. They spend years at a time on the road with each other. And the workplace isn't like that. Most workplaces is full of people who have got their own agendas, who don't understand each other well enough to do this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? It's to lend itself better to particular work environments or work cultures and things, but it shouldn't do. I think this could make a huge difference to everyone, but not an easy one, this one, I don't think. But
not easy, and I think, and I've just interrupted you. Ding! I'm getting very conscious of interruptions now since the Blue Book, Nancy's Blue Book on interruptions. I think you're right. It's difficult, but its difficulty shouldn't be the reason organizations and teams and individuals give for not doing it.
Correct. And I think we have to get rid of that limiting assumption that people can't do it.
I think so. And we'll come back to all of these. We really will, because they merit it. But I'm going to pause this at that point and move on to the next very shortly. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.